So today we're going to talk, okay, so section 3 is what we're supposed to be talking about, which we will get into, Pandas and everything like that. Real quick, like show of hands, just give me a thumbs up if you like, yeah, I started it. I'm actually in section 3 right now. Maybe like a sideways being like, I looked at it, but I haven't really done anything with it yet. And then just thumbs down. It sounds a bit negative, but just thumbs down if you just haven't gotten to it yet. And that's fine if you haven't gotten to it yet. Okay, cool. So I see a lot of people maybe at least like looked at it, might not have like completely started into it, and that's okay. Ideally, of course, like I said before, ideally during these sections, if you can get into it, awesome. If not, totally understandable. I don't expect you guys necessarily to get into it. But of course, if you guys are starting it, and you see things that you come across as you're going into it, or even if you're just skimming it just to look what those sections are, and you say, hey, I really like to know about this or something like that, let me know ahead of time, especially, because then I can put it part of our section, or at least, during the thing you say, hey, I saw this in the section, can you explain a little bit more about that? So that kind of helps out everyone in this case, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing my screen, which I actually am gonna share all of my things that I want. Okay, so most of the windows are gone, so it won't be too in your face, hopefully. All right, and let me go ahead and close this guy. So the first thing I want to show you guys real quick, first of all, you guys can all see my screen, right? Cool. All right, you guys are off to my other side, so just make sure you guys are there. So main thing is I wanted to emphasize about Slack. So you guys already know you're in your channel, online DSPT 041519. Okay, that's your channel, and you guys are always welcome. That's kind of like your guys' place to like talk about anything specifically that we're talking about, or anything like that. Maybe something else, maybe went over something in the study groups. You can talk about that. It's basically your guys' specific channel. Sorry, Igor, not part of that. But kind of speaking to that, is that there are some other sub-channels. So I don't know if you guys have seen this yet or noticed it. I didn't really point it out directly, but you'll see this module 1 data analysis, mod 2, prob stat, all of these starts. These are also all the other data science online students. So people who are in part-time, people who are in full-time, people who are in self-pacing, people who are basically done. Like there's some people who are working on their graduation, their capstone project. So there are people all over in there. If you ever have a question, you're always free to ask me directly. But you guys probably have started noticing is that I might not be able to get to it right away. And it's just because, there's a lot of things going on, and, I try my best to try to respond to you guys as best I can, but sometimes I'm just only one person. So one good thing to do is like, if you just want to reach out to everyone in your own Slack channel, say, hey, like I'm working on this stuff right now. Has anyone else come across this problem? Which I've seen a couple people, which is awesome. I see a lot of talk about Git, for example, which can be, pretty frustrating at times. So we'll talk about it today. But also, if there's other questions too, you can always go on your channel or for this case, mod 1. So these are all the people who are currently working on mod 1. And of course, you might see, for example, Raphael is one of our other instructors. You'll see other instructors on there, tech coaches. Like you've probably, I think Ben is the one who's interacted the most with our group. Also, there's Abinit. You'll see him kind of answer questions on there. And of course, there's other people from other cohorts in data science all talking on that channel. So it's a good place to just kind of like, if you want a general question. And one thing you should know too is that if you're working on a lab or a project, don't feel like you can't share it because like, oh, I don't want to spoil it for other people or anything like that. Again, like we don't grade those labs. We don't grade those projects. Those are really like for your case to really practice it out. And just because it's not graded, like I used to tell students this when I was teaching middle school, just because it's not graded doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, right? But especially in this case, like you guys really know it's like a real practice for you. And I think you even had a couple people say like, oh, the solution's different from what I would have done, stuff like that. And I like to say the solution's kind of a bad name for it. I wouldn't call it a solution. I would call it saying like an example solution. And so it might not be complete in that sense of like everything that, I think, for example, someone mentioned about the calculator and being like, it didn't have all the different edge cases and stuff like that. And they actually had put in the edge cases, which is awesome. Like, and I think that's a good practice for you too. But don't feel like, also like it goes the other way. It's like, if you don't have everything that the solution had, don't feel like you didn't do the right solution. There's multiple ways to do it. The main thing is to, first of all, see if you can achieve the goal, whatever the lab or whatever it's asking for, making sure you can actually achieve that. And then on top of that, making sure you understand the code you're writing. And then not just maybe your code you're writing, but also if you see the solution, you're like, what's going on here, and see if you can take it apart, play around with it. I think Bardo, for example, asked this morning, it's like, hey, I noticed, you can you just do, what's it called? like, use, I think it was like X or something like that. It was getting just the labels out. And he said, "Can you just do that?" And I said, "Go try it out." And it turned out it did work. So that was cool. So those are things you can do. And then of course, if you're not quite sure, it's like, oh, you know what? I see the solution. I see that it works, but I just can't wrap my brain around it. Ask people, say, "Hey, I saw this in the solution." You could just copy that one line of code, put little backticks on Slack. You can ask a question through Learn, and just see what people say. And it's a good way to have a conversation. Okay. So cool. Any questions about how Slack works or anything like that? Cool. All right. So I just wanted to show you guys that, since that was something that we kind of went through a lot. Another thing I wanted to point out is that I've pointed this out a few times already, is this resource, this basically like spreadsheet of resources. Have you guys seen this? Thumbs up if you know what I'm talking about. I see most people are saying yes. In case you haven't, again, this is where the instructors, including myself, will try to put all our resources on there, which includes recordings. If there's, for example, other material, like there's other notebooks or something like that, we'll try to put everything on here. There are, like, for example, some tutorials that's, I don't remember who actually made these ones, but they made some recordings about GitHub, for example, that might be useful to kind of quickly go through. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I skip around on YouTube videos just to kind of like see if I find the meat of what I'm looking for. And of course, there's all the study groups right here. This is the main tab you'll probably want to go to. And you'll see that it's organized by module, by section, and you'll see all the different instructors that have been putting material on there. It's a good place to kind of like go there and check out and see what's there. And for example, I like, sometimes I'll even point to you guys to, like, for example, Jeff does a really good job. He does a lot of code throughs where he's walking through the code and going through. And I think that's a really good one, especially if you've seen it before. And then you could even like speed him up to like 2 times speed, if you're like getting everything, and just see him like basically go through it and see what the process looks like in a live coding session. Okay. And if that's something you guys are interested in too, let me know ahead of time and we can do something like that for one of the sections. I'm always open up to feedback. All right. So any questions on this good spreadsheet for the resources? Okay, cool. So I wanted to point that out because, we're a second weekend, and then we're almost into next week is our break. So do you guys know this? Is that next week is going to be a week-long break? Okay, cool. So it's in the calendar on Learn, and that's the best way to kind of check out where everything is. But next week will be break, which means that I'll still kind of be around in Slack. I won't necessarily be like super active on Slack, like, checking in like I normally would. There aren't any study groups. There's no one-on-ones, that kind of thing. So you guys can, of course, you guys are welcome to talk with each other and stuff like that. But for example, if you're thinking of a time to like, relax, it'd be a good time to relax. Or if you want to take that time to kind of like upskill yourself, maybe watch some GitHub, resources, that might be good. I think what I'll probably do too is I might release the next 2 sections. So that would be sections 5 and 6, just so you guys have it available. So that way, if you guys go through all through 4 and you're like, you know what, I'm feeling good, I want to start ahead, you can do that. But don't feel like you're required to do that. In fact, I'm not expecting anyone. If you don't do anything until like basically that Saturday after break, for sections 5 and 6, that would be awesome because that's already ahead of where I'd expect you guys. So again, that break's coming up next week. So just kind of know. Any questions about break? Cool. All right, awesome. So let's see here. Trying to go through my list of stuff that I want to show you guys. Okay, so let's see here. So this resource right here, so we're going to talk about section 3 a little. Oh, you know what? No, I'm not going to talk about section 3. I'm going to show you about GitHub specifically. Okay, so first of all, just a quick thumbs up. Who is having issues with, or not issues, but like who might need some more practice with GitHub? Like, oh, I saw thumbs shoot straight up. So I know you guys need that. So one thing I would say is that GitHub in particular, it's just one of those things that just take a lot of like, there's a lot of stuff you can do. And in fact, I don't know how GitHub, or not Git, but Git in specifically, is that there's a lot of stuff that I never used before or I haven't used very much. And just know that there's so much to do. But the basic stuff that you guys will use is basically essentially your Git status to check, what's going on, Git Clone, okay, to get stuff, from the GitHub, Git Add, which will basically move stuff into staging. And I'll talk about this in a second. And Git Commit and Git Push. Those are kind of like your main commands you're going to go over and over, especially git add, git commit, git push. That's going to be like you're going to be sick of just doing anything. Git add, git commit, git push, git add, git commit, git push. You're going to do that all the time. And that's the main stuff. But just know there's a whole wealth of other commands that GitHub or the tool Git really has. And one thing I kind of want to put your guys' mind in is that Git is really about versioning. It's a version control system. So you'll sometimes people talk about it as a VCS. And basically it's a way to like, you can kind of think of it like a backup, but it's more powerful than that. Basically it shows you when things change. So it's kind of cool behind the scenes what Git's actually doing is when you do a git add and then git commit, it's actually saying you made changes and it's only saving those changes from what it was previously. So basically it's a really nice like compressed form of things that you've changed and stuff like that. And it's a nice way to like logically go through. So you won't, every time you do like when you do a command save, right? Or control save or control S, right, to save, you might save every single time, but a git commit is more like, oh, there's a logical change. So for example, let's say you're building the calculator project. You might say, oh, I put in multiplication. And you would say, oh, you finish the multiplication function and you do a git add, git commit. Some people might say, multiplication was really easy. I'll just do a multiplication and say, oh, I did division. Okay, that was a lot of code right there that logically ties together. I'll do a git add, git commit. So you don't have to do it just one time. Really, your commits can be multiple times for one project. Okay, and in fact, I would recommend doing that too. Because one, it's like a backup. So if something bad happens, you can at least get it from GitHub if you actually do a git push. Two, it actually makes more sense. It makes the code easier to run through. And it gets a good practice as you get to more and more advanced code, where you might make a change and you want to like kind of split off from that change and going through, and this is called branching. And that's a much more involved process. But if you're used to making frequent commits, it's not that bad. It's not that big of a deal. It's kind of like, oh, I'll just go back to this specific change. So this kind of leads me to my resources, and I'll share this on Slack as well. And I'll probably put them on the resource too. So remind me, again, if I say something and I don't do it, send me, shame me on the channel. Like, say, hey, Victor, you said you were going to put the resources in there. I was like, oh, that's right. If you send me a direct message, I can just pretend. No, you can send me a direct message too. But feel free to shame me on the exact channels, and then I'll remember to do it. Okay. So the first thing is Atlassian, which it's kind of like a big enterprise. They own like Trello and a few other things too, like Jira. But they have a good resource, a really quick resource to kind of show you some basics of like what GitHub is, what the Git tool actually is. Well, they don't say GitHub because they have their Bitbucket, which is like GitHub for Atlassian. But they show you like the same process of saying Git Clone, Git Add. So this is a good resource to go through. And I'll just go ahead and throw it on this the Zoom chat, which I realized, where's my Zoom chat? It moved around. Okay. So I'll throw it on the Zoom chat so you guys can check that out. And I'll put this on GitHub or on the Slack channel too. So a good one to just kind of show some parts, like, what to do. And they do a pretty good job explaining. There's some extra stuff, for example, like this depth 0. There's some configuration stuff. There's a lot of stuff you can get into Git, but the main stuff you probably have to remember is those 5. Git Clone, Git Add, Git Commit, Git Push, and what else did I say? Git Status. Those are like the main 5 that you'll probably do over and over again. Okay. Now, there's a couple resources too that I would suggest, and the thing about this is that they are, sorry, my thing's blocking it, so I can't read it. So these ones, basically, they're free online courses. It's through Udacity. I think they actually do a really great job on these particular courses. And it's free, but just know they are like kind of mini courses. I think the recommended here is like approximately 3 weeks. I don't know exactly what the time frame is they're thinking about, because I've done this like within a couple weekends, kind of deal. And so it's kind of up to like how you want to do it, but they do a really good job in this particular one. And I'll share this out on Slack too. But this one I really like because they kind of like go through, it's a little corny sometimes, but they do a good job explaining everything, where they're like, it's a real life application of Git. And so they're kind of like, oh, this happens. Like, oh, I want to make a change. Oh, I made this change. Wait, what's going on? Oh, I do these commands. And so they do a good job kind of showing what the logical process is as you're going through. So I really like this one because it kind of helped it. For me, I actually watched this, and this is what solidified my knowledge in Git. And the main thing is, if you're going to like say, oh, there's too much, like, I don't know what to go through it, just do a little bit. You can do this over like next like 2 months even, and to get everything. But I'd say the first part is really just like going through this lesson 1 part. and then into lesson 2. And that's the main stuff you're going to have to do right now anyway. So if you kind of like breeze through this stuff, you know, maybe you're going to take a little break from like coding and reading stuff all the time. You can do this stuff and you can kind of watch a couple videos and see how they go through. And of course you can rewind and everything. This is a good one. The next one I wanted to show you, there's also another course here, which this original one I just showed you is kind of on the older side. You can tell it's just not as polished. It's still really great content. It's just not as pretty looking. This lesson right here, also through Udacity, also free. Again, it can be kind of a lot of information. It's very polished, but approaches more in the sense of saying, this is what Git is. This is what a commit is. This is the definition of this, which is very informative, but might not necessarily be what I found the other one to be very useful, because I got to see like what they would logically be doing. What would they be doing at work, for example, or like in a professional setting. This is much more saying these are the different stuff, like you're reading through a tutorial, okay? And again, the main thing is probably on this case is lesson 1 is your main stuff you want to do. And I think they might have reorganized it. I thought there were 6 lessons, but anyway, this is another good one. So these are things you might be able to do during your break, or, you know, maybe if you have a little time, watch like, you know, a couple videos. They're like maybe like 3 to 5 minutes long, you know, and just like take a little break from that and kind of absorb what you can. One thing about data science, you're always going to be learning constantly, okay? And then there's the last one here, which kind of goes along with another Udacity thing. It's just a tutorial, kind of similar to Lassian's showing, but another resource that you can kind of use to kind of see how they do it and how they explain stuff. And this is much more, instead of saying, this is a commit, this is, you know, this part, they're kind of logically going through, oh, if you were setting up Git, oh, if you're making your first commit, you know, if you're going through all that stuff, they do a good job explaining, like, it seems like more logical, like of what you would actually be receiving. So again, I'll share all 4 of these resources on Slack later. Okay, cool. All right. So anyway, that was kind of like my big things. Like these are some resources, do this stuff. Okay. Now, kind of speaking to all of that stuff I just showed you, I did create a little script that would help you guys, because I know some people did this already. So I think it's section 1's lesson. I showed you guys how to make your own repo, and then like cloning the repos into there. I'm seeing some nods, good. And I actually realized, if you actually watch that video, you'll see the little face in me go like, wait a second. Oh, that didn't work out. And I was like, oh shoot, like I showed you guys something that I didn't expect. And so what was happening is that if you clone a repo inside of another repo, the Git tool basically doesn't know which repo should be used as like the main one. And so there's a few ways you can deal with this. One is creating something called a submodule, which, to be perfectly honest, is a little more complicated than what we're doing. So I didn't want to give you guys that. But you might want, for example, if you created a tool that relies on another open source tool, you might use a module within there, but you want to keep that module up to date. That's why you make a submodule. But that's not quite what we want to do. So what we want to do really is kind of like make essentially a copy of the lesson, like especially the labs or the project, like the little projects we have, the section projects, and keep that inside our own repository. So this is a little different than what you would do with a submodule. So I had created a little tool for you guys to help out, and I can share it out too. But I'm going to show you guys what this process would look like. So bear with me a little bit. And if you already started, like, for example, if you already did your, what's it called? If you already made this repo, like I think I talked about like making it like your curriculum or Flatiron resources or whatever you call it, right? And then making mod 1 and then copying the stuff there. If you already done that, you can continue to do this. You can continue to use this thing on top of what you've been doing. Note though, basically what would probably happen is that GitHub only looks at like as a submodule. So you'll notice that your work hasn't quite actually been saved up there. So you can kind of like, if you need help, for example, like on our one-on-one, I can walk you through the process to basically backlog some of that stuff. But if you use this process from now on, at least then you know it works, okay? Makes sense? So I'm just gonna show you real quickly again. I'm gonna make a new repository. I think you guys already seen this. I'm gonna walk through it really quickly. And I'll just call it like curriculum, okay? Something like that, and say copy of curriculum. And of course, give it some more, something meaningful. I'm gonna make it public. I'll do my git ignore here, Python, okay? And I think I can actually, can I do Mac? Nope, okay, yeah. So Python, note that it won't remember .ds store, which I showed before. Okay, so that's something you'll have to do. But I'll go ahead and create a repository. It's gonna make a new repository and boom, got a new repo, okay? So now what I wanna do, it's my own repo, I own it. I got Mr. Geislinger, this is me, okay? My curriculum, and I'll do a clone download. So right here, I get clone download, and you'll see that I got this little URL, okay? And this is how I can click on there and click that. Note that if I went to a curriculum like that was owned by Flatiron, I could still clone and download, but I won't have writing access to that repo. So if I try pushing from that repo, it'll give me an error saying, hey, you're not the owner of this repo. Basically, you're trying to make changes onto the curriculum, and the curriculum said, hey, you're not an owner on here. So that's why I have to make it on my own part. That's what a fork really does. It makes a copy of it onto your own, but it's kind of more complicated. But we're gonna do something else. So I'm gonna get this guy. And in this case, I'm going to show you guys something simple instead of versus me doing something really complicated. So I have my terminal, and I'll make it a little bit bigger so you guys can read it a little better too. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and cd onto my desktop. Okay, so I'm just changing my directory here. You can say pwd, cm desktop. I'm gonna do a git clone. So now I'm cloning it from my GitHub. And remember, I cloned my thing, so I should be able to push to it too myself. So I'll do a git clone, and I have it in my clipboard, right? My curriculum.git, and I'll clone it, and cool. And you'll see over here my curriculum, right? So you can see I have nothing in there because I didn't, well, I have that my .git ignore, but you can't see that because it's a hidden file. Okay, so cool, I made my new repo. So now I'm gonna go say, okay, I'm gonna make a new directory. I'll go into here, I'll put file, new folder, let's say mod1, okay? I'm gonna go, okay, go to there, that's nothing in here. I'm gonna cd into mod1, okay? And then say, okay, oh, sorry, I didn't cd into curriculum. I did this last time too. So I'm inside now my repo. If I do git status, you'll see that there's a new thing in there. For example, there's a .ds store, doesn't really matter. But I'm gonna go ahead and cd into mod1, okay? And so now what happens, like, okay, cool. I got my mod1 here, and the idea is I wanna get the curriculum. So I could even do like section 1, like make a new folder and make that. But I'm just gonna show you guys how you would go about this. So now what I showed you before is we go to, let's say, module 1, I'll go section 1, and data science process, why not? Okay. I click on my GitHub guy, you've seen this process before, go here. And before I told you guys, you could do a fork, which is what the learn curriculum tells you to do, which will make your copy of your own curriculum, but then your contributions won't show up. So I'm clicking clone or download here, and I'm just gonna copy this URL. You see it ends with that .git, okay? And what I told you guys to do before, remember I'm in mod 1 here. I told you guys to do a git clone and then this repo. The problem is if I do this now, there's a .git directory, which basically Git doesn't know what to do when you have two .git. It's hidden, so that's why it's not as obvious. And one solution is submodules, which we're not going to do. So I wrote a little script for you guys. So what this is the script right here, and it's all in Python, which just makes it nice. You know, as you guys get further into it, you'll learn what it is. For example, I have it in here, which is probably closer to, yeah, I called it repo clone. And so don't worry too much about the exact process, but just know basically I've created a Python script that will basically clone the repo that you give it. It will remove that extra .git that gives it trouble. So now it becomes yours. And then it'll actually append inside the README within that directory. It'll say, hey, here's the link to what changes what repo I copied over. So this is really useful because then you can just basically run this script. You can do multiple clones and not worry about, you know, what it is and then work from there. So I'll show you how this works, okay? So ignoring this part, again, you can look it over when I send it to you guys. But I'm in mod 1 here and I have a copy of this right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy this. Oops, come on. Copy it, paste it in here. So I have this repo.clone within my mod 1, okay? And so again, I'll show this video too, so then you guys can walk through this part. So that way you can kind of do step by step, okay? But I have my repo.clone, okay? And what I'm gonna do, I'm in mod 1 here, and I'll just kind of show you guys. If I see ls, okay, there's my repo clone. So the way to run this, you're inside the directory that you want to copy your repos in, okay? So for example, I'm in mod 1. This is where my copies from learn will live, all right? So what I can do here, I'll do Python and then repo clone. And what this tells basically is, hey, Python, go run this script. So if you're in Windows, for example, you would use git bash and do the same exact thing. Okay, if you're in Mac, you just open up a terminal and navigate here, and you're going to go into, in this case, I put in my mod 1. So just kind of emphasize this, is that I'm inside my curriculum, and then inside my mod 1 is that repo clone. Okay, and I'll keep this off the side so you can see what's happening on the side here. And so I'll go ahead and run this, Python repo clone.py. And it basically tells you, hey, you're in, and it's, note this is really rough. I wrote this like in about 30 minutes. So it's, you know, a little rough. So for example, I made a little mistake, this \n, whatever. Okay. But basically it's telling you, hey, this is where you currently are right now. And so you want to make sure, like, for example, if you're doing mod 1, you're in mod 1. It's basically giving a confirmation. If you're in the correct area, if you type Y or yes, it'll proceed. If you type anything else, it won't proceed anymore. And it'll quit. Which is fine. So if you're in the wrong directory, you can click no and then like cd into the right place and make sure your repo clone is there. Okay. So say yes, I'm in the correct area. It's like, okay, do you want to continue cloning with a repo? Yes, I do. I do want to continue. All right. So I'll put Y for yes, right? And it says, what repo URL do you want to clone? No extra spaces or characters. See, typo. Okay. Should end with a .git. So I'm going to go back to my learn co right here, as we saw before. And I'm going to go ahead and clone this specific one. And I'll just copy this part. You could click this button too. So I'll make sure I copy it. And then I'm just going to paste it right here. I'm not going to type anything extra, no extra spaces, nothing, right? And just paste it into here. And you'll see there's my whole guy, https, github.com, all the way to the .git. Okay. I'm going to press enter now. And basically it'll put out some stuff. And note that the way it outputs, I could fix this in the future update, but again, I was just making it really quickly. I just made sure if there's an error. So it will say possible error. It's not an error in this case. It just says cloning into this part. If there was an error, you'll likely see something like fatal. Okay. And then what it does basically, it does this special thing where it clones it with a normal git clone. Okay. And it does this special thing where it removes that little extra weirdness that I mentioned before, that .git directory that was interfering with our stuff. It gets rid of that. So that way you don't have to worry about it interfering. So then it says if the clone was successful, I don't test for it in the script. Basically you have to decide, did it make sense? And you can see right here, it showed up, so cool. All right, and you can see all the stuff inside here is in there, awesome. It says if it's successful, we're gonna give it credit inside the README. So you note first that in this mod 1, there's no readme.md file. If there doesn't exist, it will create a new README file. If there is a README file, it'll just append to the bottom, and I'll show you what that looks like. So it says, what is the name of your README? So if you did have a README in there, for example, let's say it was like some other thing that you called it, should be README, but let's just say it was something different. You're just gonna enter that text. Otherwise, if there's already one in there, or you just want it to create a new one, you could just probably just not press put in anything. You're just gonna press enter, and it's continue on. Note that the file must be in the current directory in case sensitive. So just note that it has to be in this mod 1 directory. If I had my README file in another directory, like if I had it in curriculum and not in this mod 1, so if I had like something like, oh, I can't show it in here, but if I had another file just right here, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't write into that file. It has to write in the one in mod 1 directory. Okay, so you'll see it kind of pop up in here. So I'm just going to press enter. This is the easiest way to do it. Press enter, and you see it made a new README file right here. And it says README was appended with repo cloned, and it basically gives the URL. If you wanted to continue with a new repo, so for example, let's just give it one other one just to show the point. So if you had like multiple ones, you could like keep copying and putting it in there. It might be a little easier that way. So this is a new repo. Come on, GitHub. Okay. And then I'll go ahead and copy this and say, yeah, I want to go ahead and continue with a new one. Yes, what's the repo? Same exact thing. So it's a new repo in this case. And I'll clone it, and you see it pop up over in the file directory. Awesome. And it says, what is the name of the README? I'm just going to press enter, and it's going to append to it. So before I press enter, I just want to show you what this will look like. So if I open this up with Adam, you can see it kind of shows right here. And basically, this is the file. It says repo added, and it shows the URL of that file. Okay. And so now, if I go ahead and click enter on here, it'll append with my new repo. So if I open this up now again, come on, Adam, there you go. you can see there's now a new repo. So it lists basically the ones that you copied over. So that way you can kind of give credit to, so that way you're not taking as your own credit, right? But you say, okay, I added this repo. If I had something like up here, for example, like if I put in like repos that were cloned, it'll just keep adding to the bottom of the file. And that way you can kind of show like, oh, these are the repos I added in here, okay? So in this case, I don't have any more repos in here on the script, so I'll just click say no or N, and it just exited, and I'm back into my terminal where I can type again, okay? So this way it allows you, like, you don't have to go through that whole weird mess and stuff like that. I know it's a little like maybe not the best, cleanest way to do it, but I think this way at least it gives you credit, because now what happens, we can actually add stuff to our repo by doing our Git Add, Git Commit, okay? So if I go here, I'm going to go clear this out just to kind of show you. So I'll do a git status here, okay? And you'll see that there are some new files in here. So we have all these things in here. So I actually want to go ahead and add this in here. So again, you can see there's a list of all those files. I did an ls. I'll do a git add dsc, and then it's asking me to finish that part. So one quick thing you can do is you can do a tab. So I'll do a git add, and remember git add means you add the files, right? You're adding it to the staging area. So I do git add. If I do dsc, you'll see that it stops right here when I do a tab. If you put the next letter in there, so in this case the next letter is 5, and do a tab, it'll complete autocomplete. So that way you don't have to type the whole thing out yourself. Kind of useful when it is super long like this. So now I do a git add, and you can see here that those will be added in my git status. Basically say, hey, are they ready to be committed? And you can see now all these new files and stuff like that. So I did a whole lot of new things. It doesn't have to be each individual file at a time. So it's like, cool, I got all those parts in here. And then it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about the git readme, or the readme.md, right? And remember, that was the one where it tells us about what repos were cloned. So I was like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and do git add readme.md. If you want to, you could add this repo clone part. You don't necessarily need to. I'm gonna ignore it for now. It's not a big deal. So I got all those parts in there. I got my git add, and then I'm gonna do a git commit. And then so if you remember git commit -m, my message, I'm gonna say new repos cloned, from Flatiron. Oops. Okay, from Flatiron. So basically I'm saying, hey, what are you doing? What changes did you make? Oh, I made all these changes. This is the message that's associated with these changes. Okay, so now I do git commit -m with my message, and you'll see a whole bunch of stuff. It's like, whoa, basically saying you made all those commits. Okay, so one way to check these commits you can do, and I'll clear this up so you don't have to see all that stuff. So I'm still in the same place, but if I do now a git log, you actually see, hey, there's my new commit right there. Okay, so now what I have is like, cool, I got my new commit. It's all set, ready to go. But you'll notice these guys right here, this is kind of giving us a message saying, hey, this is where we know where GitHub is, and this is where you are right now. We want these to ideally be on the same exact level. And note that it goes from top down, meaning the most recent, to the oldest stuff. Okay, so your old commits will be lower down, your newest commits will be at the very top. Okay, but now I want to actually sync this up with GitHub. So does anyone know what I type now to sync it up with GitHub?
Git push.
Git push, perfect. Okay, so git push. You could also, if you wanted to be redundant, origin master, but if it's your only remote, we just can do git push, and we didn't add anything special. We can do git push though. Okay, so git push. Cross your fingers, hope everything works, and it's writing that. It's uploading. It's uploading. It's got a lot of files in there, and it's uploaded. So cool, 100% basically uploaded. It makes a little message right here to say, hey, it's master. If I do a git log, you'll see, remember how this guy right here was on the bottom, and this is my most recent commit. We'll see now that they're both on that same line, saying, hey, basically my GitHub is synced up equivalent to my local computer. Okay, and now if I check my repo, which is this one right here, my curriculum, right? We'll refresh this, and we should see our mod 1, and you'll see my files right here. You'll see my README. There's repos that were cloned, has a list of all my repos that I cloned, which is good, giving credit. And then note that someone can click on here and actually go to the original LearnCo students, which is good. So that way someone else can figure out what I'm looking at. And then now I'm going to go inside here, and you can see all the files are on here. Remember I said there's that weird dot, I did something weird with the script. This is that weirdness. I basically changed that name so that way Git doesn't recognize this anymore as a separate repo. Okay, that's basically the big part that I changed. If you're curious about this, I can talk about this offline or in a one-on-one, or if you guys want me to talk about it, we can talk about it. But that's what's going on here. Okay, so this way you guys can actually like do a Git clone. It's a little different in that sense, but at least now you can make basically those changes and they count as your own changes. So yeah. So any questions on anything I kind of did? At least the procedure of how to do that. Okay, cool. Thumbs up, thumbs down, sideways for understanding. Okay, some sideways. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I know. I kind of pulled a fast one on you guys. Like, it's like you run the script and things happen, and that's what happens, right? Hopefully the script, to be honest, a little much what's going on. You're welcome. Like, I'll share the script out, and that way you guys can, what's it called? You can go through it. Igor, are you on Slack right now? Did you make a Slack profile?
Yes, I did.
Okay, cool. If you message me, Igor, I can send you that thing too, since I'm missing put on the Slack, but obviously you're not part of our channel, so you won't see it. So anyway, I'll share that out and make sure you can read it through. You can kind of explore it. If you want me to walk it through, we can do it over a one-on-one or whatever, right? So just know that's there. The main thing I want to tell you guys though is, well, let me ask you guys. I can do one of two things right now since we have about 20 minutes left in the study group. I can go into section 3, do a overview of that, and that will take us to the end pretty much of this study group. Or I can go and show you how you do, like what the heck is going on with Git Add, Git Commit, and pushing it through. And I can kind of walk you through that part. I don't know how to do this. Do one for saying, oh, go on to section 3. Give me a 2 if you are you'd rather do me explain the Git, like the Git Add, Git Commit, not the script part, but how you would do those changes. So 1 for this, 2 for GitHub. Okay, good. We have a little split up. So keep your fingers up so I can count them real quick. Sorry. So okay. So how everyone just show me 1 if you want. Everyone who wants to see section 3, just show me 1. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that right? 5, 6, 7. Okay, good. So I think that's the majority. Okay, cool. So Git stuff. If you want me to go over specifically in 1-1, we can go talk about that. There's also a resource that I just talked with another cohort about, so we can actually, you can see that video, and I hope I do a good job explaining it. Also, there's the resources for GitHub too, which can be useful. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and get into section 3. So I think it's gonna be easier if I just stop sharing my screen for a second. Sorry, everyone. And where did my thing go? This is what happens when you guys have too many windows, right? There we are. Is this it? Yes, this is what I want to show. Okay. This makes it easier to share. So now I'm going to share my screen again. There we go. Okay, cool. So you guys should see a Google Drive there. Cool. All right. So sorry, I have a bunch of windows blocking it. Okay, so the first thing I want to share with you guys is another resource. Again, this is similar to, again, Eli, one of the other instructors, did a great job putting this together. Has a few things, for example, some cheat sheets, basically about Pandas, which is what section 3 is about. Basically, Pandas is an extension to Python. Oh, excuse me. And so these are some good cheat sheets. There's a lot to Pandas. It's kind of like it's almost like it's like leveling up Python. That's kind of like how I imagine Pandas, because that's very similar syntax, but slightly different. You can see, for example, I don't think if you guys can see that too well, but you can see there's a whole lot of information on here. This is a good kind of like reference to go back and forth, because as a data scientist, you're going to be using Pandas a lot. Like we're going to be using Pandas for basically the whole rest of the course. And so you'll get used to this stuff, but especially as you're beginning, and even if, like halfway through, you might still reference like, wait, how did I do that again? And it's good to actually use some of these cheat sheets. And there's also resources online. Okay, so there's some 2 main cheat sheets, and I'll share this. I'll just share this out now. Cool, and then my chat. So put on the Zoom chat. So there's those parts right here. There's also this notebook, which we'll actually go through a little bit today. And then there's also quite a lot inside these zip files. There's a lot of extra material in there that Eli had put together. I actually might be similar to the learn stuff, but note that there's a whole bunch of information in these parts, which you can practice even more on top of the learn curriculum if you want to go even deeper. He also has, oh yeah.
What's the difference, or what's the relation between Pandas and NumPy?
Oh, good.
NumPy?
Yeah. NumPy. Yeah, NumPy. I had this debate with Eli before. He calls it NumPy sometimes, and I call it NumPy, but I like NumPy. It makes sense because Python, NumPy. I don't know. But anyway, so I think you guys have started talking about NumPy, right? In section 3, or was it just last section? Remind me. Thumbs up if you know what we're talking about NumPy. No? Thumbs down? I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, NumPy is something we'll get more into, especially. But since Bardo asked, NumPy basically, or Pandas, is built on top of NumPy. And so NumPy basically is a way to, have you guys heard of C, C++ before? You might have heard those terms. So C, C++ is a really old language from like the 1970s, but it's actually very efficient, but it's a little cumbersome to use. So Python's actually much easier to kind of read through it, but you kind of pay for that by its simplicity for its speed. And as data scientists, you want speed sometimes, because if you have a million large data file, right, like a million data points, you don't want to like wait around, for this thing to go through. So for example, using a for loop turns out to be very slow compared to what Pandas can do. And the reason why Pandas can do it so quickly, go through that data very quickly, is using NumPy. And NumPy basically, if you're really curious, it drops into the C level memory, and basically does something called vectorization, which speeds up things much quicker for the most part. And so Pandas is basically using NumPy. And we'll talk more about NumPy. We'll see in the future sections. Okay, does that answer your question, Bardo?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So just know that for now, just know that Pandas is using NumPy on the side to do a bunch of efficiencies. And it's really useful in that case. It's great for basically doing data science, okay? So I want to show real quickly this part right here that Eli had put together, basically some learning objectives, your whole point of basically like, what are you trying to learn? And so, for example, we want to make sure you guys know how to import the CSV files. CSV files are probably super common. You might also get like something called a TSV. CSV just stands for comma separated values. Okay, basically it's just a list. It's a text file where all the values are separated with commas. So who here has ever used a spreadsheet? Just kind of like raise your hand a little bit. So has anyone never used a spreadsheet? Give me a thumbs down if you know. I don't know what a spreadsheet is. Okay, that's okay. All right. So a spreadsheet, for example, let's see if I do sheet.new. So for example, Google Drive can make spreadsheets. Excel's a spreadsheet. Okay, those are those kind of things. You can basically put all these values. So for example, say column 1, column 2, column 3, right? And then each column might have something like, oh, this has like 12, 4, 3, right? But like each part would be a separate value. And so a lot of what's kind of interesting as a data scientist, you might be interacting with another business or an organization that has a bunch of information, and a lot of this information, data analysts and just basically business people, they'll usually make some kind of spreadsheet, and usually that's a .xls, which is an Excel format, or more formally, you can download it as a .csv. So you can see right here .xlsc, Microsoft, and then you'll see .csv right here. Okay, and basically it's just a comma separated values. So if I were to download this real quick and I were to open this up with Adam. And these are important to actually know. You're saying, this seems like really basic. Like, why are you showing this? You just know that's a text file. Oh, it takes a second. Okay. So you can see right here, they're just separated by columns. So column 1, column 2, 1 or 12, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. And they're just separated by commas. So it's just a way to represent data. And so much data is represented in CSV files. You're going to be working with them a lot of times as a data scientist. So it's important that we know how to import those in. And then there's a few other things to talk about here. You can read through this. I'm not going to go through the whole thing since you guys have the resource. Okay. And then at the very bottom here, there's a lot of resources. These are some of that Eli had collected and that he felt were pretty good. He makes a point that they're not in order of anything, just because it's 1, 2, 3. It just could just simply be like, dot. And these are just resources to like, really go into it. And this is nowhere near as much resources that are available for Pandas. Pandas is very, there's a whole lot of people who use Pandas, and that's because it's for data science. Okay, so I want to show you guys, is this it? Yep, okay. So I want to show you guys a little bit on this Collab notebook. This is directly from that resource set. So if I go back to those resources, it's just this notebook right here. So know that you can going through. Again, kind of going through the different objectives. Curriculum goes through a whole bunch of this stuff, but I kind of want to point out a few things on here. So read CSV, that's a major one. Basically, you're going to use that to basically use it to read in new data and stuff like that. So I'm going to open this up so I can actually edit it. So this read CSV. So the way you basically call Pandas is you just do an import Pandas, okay? And classically, we import it as an alias as PD. That way, you don't have to cut Pandas every time, Pandas, Pandas, Pandas. We can just do PD, okay? So if we import Pandas as PD, what that will do is it allows us to use this package, okay? So we've seen, hopefully we've seen imports at this point. We kind of familiarize, okay, it's got some extra code that someone else has written, and it's got a lot of code from Pandas. So I can go ahead and import this as PD. Yeah, go ahead and run anyway. They're just warning me saying, hey, are you sure you want to run this? So I import this in here. So if we wanted to read a CSV, we could do, and I don't have a CSV in here, but pd.read CSV, okay? And then you would just have, sorry, the name of the file. So file name .csv, okay? And that would just be like whatever the file is. And we can also give some extra parameters in here. For example, if I think Google Collab doesn't let me do this. Oops. So you could look more options. There's a lot of options on here for reading CSV, but just note then you can also do Excel files. So if you get an Excel file, someone's like, oh, do you have a CSV file? And they go, I don't know what a CSV file is. You can basically say, oh, do you know what Excel is? Oh, we have an Excel file, and you can read that into. And there's some other things and stuff like there to read it into it. For example, your JSON file. There's other things like XML files. So this kind of leads us saying, well, okay, what are we importing when we get this stuff? And this is something called a data frame. And so Python, sorry, not Python. I forgot how to run it. There we go. Whenever we run something, basically with Pandas, we use something called a data frame. And data frames are really just a spreadsheet of our information in here, okay? So when we're actually looking at like some information we read into with a CSV, we actually can use it called a data frame, and this allows us to like do some extra actions with it. So if I quickly, let's see if I can do some quick files in here. Give me some sample data. Let's hear California house training. So let's do, so these are some files that are built into Collab. So it's a California housing CSV, okay? And I already did that part, so I run this in here, and I'll call it, usually you'll see people put like DF as like, that's kind of like a quick dirty name. If you want to be more specific, I would have put something like CA housing DF. So I'll just do that, CADF, just so that way we know what it is. It's just a variable. So now I can run this, and not found, of course, because this is the wrong thing, does not exist. Okay, sorry guys. I'm not gonna, I don't want to waste your guys' time for me trying to import it in. Here we go. So it was in a folder called sample data. So note that I just give the path of where this data lives, okay? And it's just a file, and I run this through here, and now I have a data frame. And so with this data frame, I can do a whole bunch of things. This shows you how to export it into something special, but in this case, I actually want to do something interesting with the data frame. So the first thing we can do is say, hey, what's it look like? So I can do, if I just do CADF and I try to do this, it'll print out this whole thing. For example, you can see longitude, latitude, housing, mean data, total rooms, all that junk, okay? So there's a whole bunch of information, but you can see it can go quite some long, depending how big the file is. In this case, it has over like 3,000 rows, 3,000 data points, okay? And you can see 9 columns, meaning that there are like 9 different things it can do. But a lot of times you're like, okay, 3,000 is not that big in all terms of things, but if you had a really big file and you just want to see the first bit, I can do something called .head. And .head will basically say, pick the first 5 attributes, basically the first 5 data points. So each one of these rows is a data point. So basically, this represents one house at this longitude, this latitude, with this median age, total rooms. You guys get the point, okay? So this is like one simple data point. You can also give, for example, parameters into head. So if you like, I just want to see the very first one, you can do .head, and it'll say, oh, here's the first head, first one right here. So this is how you kind of like interact with the data frame. And note that if I do, for example, type, we've seen type before. If I do type of that data frame, we can see it's a pandas. Basically, it's from pandas, and it's something called a data frame. Okay, that's how you can double check, like, oh, is this actually a data frame or not? Okay, so with this though, as we saw with, oops, I lost you guys, dot head. If I do dot head like this, we can see, okay, cool. I got some information here. It's like, oh, there's some latitude, some total rooms, population. Okay, I want to actually check out population. So what we can do here is something called, we can index it, right? We can do a dot location, and we can say specifically what column we want. So I do like a dot lock, which we've seen before. Note that it's a square bracket, not a curly brace, okay? So kind of different here. It's kind of similar to how we do like list, right? And I can say, okay, I want to see population, right? And this will actually print out, oops, what did I do wrong here? Here, do I not have a population? Oops. There we go, sorry. I did the wrong command. We're just gonna pull out from here. So this is directly, there's a couple ways you can do it. There's dot lock. There's also just pulling directly from the data frame. And look like how it's very similar to like if you use a dictionary, it's kind of similar to how we're going on here. And this dot, this population, you can see the first few values, 1537, 809, 1484, 1537, 809, 1484. It's picking that specific column right there. So it's kind of nice. I can actually pick very specific ones. If I wanted the first column in there, or let's say the first value of population, I could do 0 like this. Right? And you can see, oh, first value. What if I wanted the last value? Anyone got a guess? I see Rudy say something, but I didn't hear.
-1.
-1.
Yeah, I thought I could kind of read your lips. So, all right, -1. Ah, didn't quite work. And that's because basically it's not quite the same thing as a dictionary. So we could actually put in, for example, let's say 299. See, which will hopefully give us the last one. So if I gave now 3,000. You see an error because we reached the end. So this is kind of annoying, right? You're like, oh man, like I don't want to deal with that. So what we can do is something with dot lock. So dot lock allows us to say, all right, I want a specific, this guy right here, okay? And I can say, all right, give me, in this case, if I got this right. Oh my gosh, I keep doing this every time. Sorry, guys. This is why I don't like live coding. So let's say I wanted the very first column and the first element in there. So I want longitude and this one right here. This will give me -12.05, okay? If I wanted this part, longitude, latitude, median, total range, for example, I wanted a population, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this allows me to kind of go through some slicing and stuff like that. So this way will give me the population, the first element on population right here. If I now do, let's say the 10th one, it'll give me the 10th one in this case. That shouldn't happen. Sorry, guys. Why would you give me this one though? I shouldn't be out of bounds. Oh, sorry. I just have it swapped over. This should be for 10. This one should be, let's say 5. Okay, and that would give us down in this part, for example. Let's say the third one. There we go, 49 is down here. So you can basically go through the data frame with .ilock with doing this. Usually if you just want to see one specific column, you would end up going through here. For example, I want to do latitude. You can see I have that specific column right here with this latitude. So this is kind of nice right here. And this is right here is a special kind of data type. And so we have this whole thing, which is a data frame. And this one right here is actually, I don't know what time it is. This is actually a series. So we can actually do type X. And this is a specific, that specific column. So that column is a series, which is another kind of thing in Pandas. So you can think of a data frame as basically a list of these series, which is kind of like a list, okay? It's not quite a list, it's a little different. It turns out to be a Numpy array, but you can kind of get the point is that it's built out of these different parts, okay? There's a bunch of other functions we can do basically. The curriculum goes through a lot of these. What I would try to do is especially just try them out. What each one does, you know, play around with it. A lot of times there are extra options within like these specific functions. So if you do like Shift Tab in Jupyter Notebook, it'll show you like the doc string and say all the different things you can do. So this is the way you can kind of like get some certain information. One kind of fun thing you can do, for example, is like if I do X and it say, you know, what are the different values? If I wanted some to actually do some display, I can actually do it x.hist, and this will actually show me a histogram of those values. So in this case, I'm looking at latitude. That's not really useful. Let's say population, right? And so now I'm looking at population and seeing like what the populations are, and it makes a histogram of this information. So it's kind of a quick, useful way to make this information available to us, okay? And this will be later on as a data scientist, like you'll probably do this .hist like all the time because you're basically very quickly pulling up this information and checking its values, okay? Yeah, so here we go. See, .lock and .ilock are basically the ways you would access this information. I see how I do this every time. Okay, that's what I'm doing on. Okay, so I go through the curriculum. Again, this is why I don't like live coding, because sometimes I'm like thinking it ahead in my head and I'll go through. So just think that this is possible. So for example, there's something called .lock. Read into the curriculum. Basically, it's a way to access this information. So one thing we can do, for example, is get, for example, all the data points where, if you had read in the data point, this is a different data. But for example, where alcohol is less than 12. So for example, if I wanted something like less than, let's say, I don't know, let's say less than 1,000, okay? What I can say is like, this will give me a series, and this is actually something called a mask. So if I actually try to print this out, it'll actually give me just a bunch of true, false, okay? But what's kind of nice though, if I wanted just the data point saying, hey, I want the data points of KADF, right, my data frame, I can use that mask. So I would say like, I'll call it mask just so it's easier to read. And I'll say CADF mask. This right here is basically going to say, hey, only look at the ones that are less than 1,000, okay, population less than 1,000, and then give me those data points. So you actually see now, you see, for example, it skipped over the very first one, right? But it went to this one, 809, and you can see 809, okay? So you can see right here on these ID parts, it actually skipped over those parts, and that's how we can kind of like reference. Note that sometimes we could have just done this, where, or let's run out of time, but I'll show you guys this last part. I could have easily done this part too. Okay. And that means the same exact thing. In fact, if I run this now, just to prove it, I'll comment this out and run this. You can see it gets the same exact input, so, or output. Okay, cool. So there's a lot of things you can do. Pandas, data frames, basically, I know I spent a lot of that time showing you guys the Git stuff. Hopefully you guys didn't feel like it was a waste of time. But this is one thing, if you're gonna really make sure you go through the beginning part, make sure you go through section 3 and really kind of understand all the different things you can do with Pandas. And note that you're not gonna memorize all of it, just like you saw me mess up just a second ago. You will sometimes, you know, think, what exactly is it? What exactly was I supposed to like call over? Note that you'll just get used to as you kind of go through. And certain what's it called? Certain keystrokes will kind of go into your memory. It's kind of like muscle memory, I like to pretend, is that you'll do the same thing over and over again and you'll get used to that specific one. And there's a bunch of ways you can do the same stuff in really Pandas and of course in Python in general. Okay guys, so I'll go ahead and stop here. Any questions before, I know I kind of ran over, but you guys have any questions in specific?
Quick one. So what's the log for then? I missed that. Why did you didn't use the log on that? That one?
So lock is another way to reference positions and stuff like that. So I think there's an example down here that can help us. Nope. Okay. So right here. So a .lock is kind of similar to like if you have done like this. So let me see if I can go ahead and put population. And I'll put CADF just to kind of show you guys similar stuff. It's just another way to reference parts of it. There's ways we can do slicing and stuff like that, which I can show you guys maybe next time. So you can see exact information. If I took this here, it would do the same thing. It's just .lock is more powerful because you can do more specific stuff. So you can specify, now it's mixing up .ilock and unfortunately. Lock basically allows you to do it by label. .ilock allows you to do it by essentially index, which means position. So I can say the first element or, you know, the third row, or like, you know, I even do like in .ilock, I can do multiple columns or multiple individuals. So it's kind of more closer to slicing in Python. So.
Okay.
It's another useful tool. I personally don't like using .lock and .ilock as often, as you guys probably noticed, because I messed up immediately. I usually will tend to do this slicing, basically calling it like similar to a dictionary.
Okay.
But of course, just there's always these different ways you can do it. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Another thing, you're running this on Google Drive directly? How? Like?
Yes. So this is a Collab, Google Collab, a collaboratory, I think it's called. And basically, it's a way to run. It's like a Jupyter notebook that's online. It's kind of like a Google Doc, but for Jupyter notebooks. So if you look, for example, collab.research, yeah, I'm going to leave. You can actually create these parts. Those here. You can actually create these things directly in Google Colab. It's a nice, quick way you can access things. Jupyter Notebook is definitely more feature-full and more common if you actually want to do stuff. But it has some perks. For example, you can use basically their online cloud. You can also send it to other people, and they can do some changes. Though again, Git tends to be more powerful than Collab itself. But it's a useful tool to, like, you'll see me sometimes use it because it's quick and easy to reference it. I'm going crazy right now. Sorry. All right. Cool. Any other questions? I know we're kind of over, but I don't have anything in the next 10 minutes.
This thing you just shared with us, this is on Slack?
I will share it with Slack, on Slack. So,
Okay.
And if I don't do it in the next like 30 minutes, just remind me and I'll make sure to share all those resources.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, if any other questions then? No? Real quick, when you guys did has everyone signed up a one-on-one with me so far for this week coming up? Give me a thumbs down if you haven't done it yet. Okay. If you haven't done it from this week, can you message me? It turned out the thing I set up through OneSchedule, which I had never done before, I might have messed it up, so I might have to. Everyone who's scheduled already is perfectly fine. It's just if someone tries to do it new, it might give you some issues. So just direct message me through Slack, and we'll set up a time. Okay. All right, guys. Well, I'll go ahead and end it here now. But hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys on Thursday. Of course, I'll see you guys on Slack. Igor, just make sure you Slack me, and I'll make sure to give you the resources too. Okay. Take care, Jonathan.